Hello, and welcome to Anime Initiative Comic Books, favorite and best place where we talk about all things anime, manga, webtoons, and more. My name is Megan Peters. I'm your host for this show, along with my good friends and coworkers, Evan Valentine and Nick Valdez. What y'all doing? How you guys doing?
Howdy, everybody.
Hey, everybody. I think I can. Let's do it one last time. United States of Smash.
See,
Oh my God.
the thing about My Hero Academia is that there were a million things you could have said there. As
Yeah.
There really
yeah.
were. I didn't know if we were gonna do a collective plus ultra.
Plus
I
ultra.
Yeah.
didn't swear, but I
Yeah.
appreciate the dedication. Truly.
Mhm.
Welcome to Anime Initiative. If you are watching this live, or if you are listening to this on the day we post it, this is a special episode. We got a bonus over here at Anime Initiative, and it's because today is the day that we have essentially been waiting like more than 10 years for. My Hero Academia is officially over. The manga, that is. Let's clarify. The manga is done. There is still a lot more of the anime to go through. We've got like a whole nother season that we're gonna have to go through. There's still a movie that needs to be released in America. We still have the anime on our side, but the My Hero Academia manga is officially finished. Today, Weekly Shonen Jump released chapter 430, and that has basically now released creator Kohei Horikoshi from the weekly series that he has been doing for a little over 10 years now. Essentially, we have gotten through the epilogue that My Hero Academia has been working through, so we are officially done with the series. Us three, we just have a lot of emotions and feelings to talk about, but before we literally say another word, spoiler warning. I need to give the biggest spoiler warning known to God and man. We are going deep into the spoilers of My Hero Academia, chapter 430. That is the plan. Please be aware that we are going into spoiler territory. If you have not read the final chapter and you want to get a quick peek at it, take a pause, go look it up. The chapter is available in English through the Manga Plus website or through Viz Media's Shonen Jump app. Check it out there. Come back. I'm sure I'm going to cry at some point in this episode, so you can, we can put a countdown somewhere until that happens. I even put it in the notes for this show. I was saying, Megan, please don't cry. Because much like Deku, I cry embarrassingly easy. So, spoiler warning is out of the way. Let's talk about it now. Chapter 430 is out. Called it. We got a nice hefty time skip, guys. we got a good time skip. Basically, as a quick rundown, in case you need a little bit of a refresher. Chapter 430 starts with basically Deku looking back at his high school career. We get a nice like spread of montage that, covers his second and third years at UA High School. We then go 8 years into the future, which is a pretty nice time skip. Like, that's a bold one. It makes Naruto's time skip look like child's play. But we go 8 years into the future where, Deku and his classmates are like in their mid-20s or so, which is, again, a bold move for a time skip. And Deku is essentially a teacher at UA High School. We get to see his, his life as a teacher. And as we move forward, we get to see a little bit of how the state of current heroics are in Japan, as well as the world to a certain degree, before eventually we get greeted by a familiar face, older All Might, whose eyes are no longer shadowed, and Deku is given the support equipment needed to return to his work as a pro hero. So that's kind of our general overview of the ending. I need to know, was the time skip a good call? We've talked about this on the show before, but I'm curious to know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think so. Like it was kind of the easiest call to make in terms of it started out with a Deku, like the series starts out with a Deku narrating from the future, right? Like this is a story about how I became the greatest hero. So, thematically, you would assume that there would be that older Deku talking and eventually closing the loop there. It's just, to the ending itself, you see how that opening has changed through the years. And of course that happens as the story changes, that it eventually an ending won't be the exact same vision that Kohei Horikoshi might have had from the start. But yeah, a time skip seemed like the easiest and best choice for a finale. It's kind of a Shonen Jump staple, right? In terms of endings, I would think.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. I thought like, well, number one, like I think if you didn't have a time skip, then My Hero Academia fans would riot. Like I
Right.
think that there's like everybody wanted to see these kids as adults, as full-grown superheroes. Like it's still wild to me. Like I know it obviously happened, like the final fight happened, but it's still wild to me that they did all this and they were only freshmen in high school when it happened. Like they
Yeah.
still have big, like giant careers ahead of them. Like they, yes, they defeated All for One in Shigaraki, but like even still, this is basically just this is like fan service for My Hero Academia fans. I think that it was necessary, and while I have criticisms with how much we should have seen in terms of their future careers and everything, like I am very appreciative of the fact that Kohei did kind of feature this and everything. I thought that it was like necessary here in the final chapter.
Well, you say that, so let's talk a little bit about those future careers, because basically in this final chapter of My Hero Academia, we get it played out that the kids of 1A are basically like mythical creatures in
As
Japan.
well they
Like,
should be.
yeah, like Izuku, a little kid runs into Izuku and is like, "Oh my gosh, you're real!" Like, he can't believe that Izuku is real. But looking at what the kids of Class 1A are doing, they are all winning humanitarian awards, holding up their own businesses. They've got TV shows going on about them, like Red Riot does. But I mean, when then we look at Izuku, at Deku, and he has gone a very different route than everyone else in Class 1A. He is, quirkless. It is confirmed during his second and third year at UA High School that the embers of his quirk fade away entirely, and he is quirkless. He confirms that while he's teaching. So, do we approve of the loss of Izuku's quirk? It's hard for me to decide on this, but I want to know what you two think first before I give my official opinion.
I am of the camp that it's fine. I you
Mhm.
know I did kind of want him to have his power somehow, because it's kind of what Deku earned. It's kind of the
Mhm.
thing where it's like, yeah, like I'm so tired of throughout the series he's been so self-sacrificial. He's literally given his
Incredibly so.
body.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's literally given his body to fight these villains, and it would have been a nice reward to have him keep a little of that power to like just he didn't need to be a god at the end of the series. He just needed to be a working hero. So to
Mhm.
see that the ending clearly was like, no, he's not a working hero, I think that's where it stings for me. It's not the fact
Mm.
that he lost his quirk, because it's part of the one for all thing. Like it has been ingrained from the beginning, and Horikoshi had spent the last like arc basically telling us, "Hey, Deku's the last one. This is it." Like we've
Mhm.
been getting hints at that being it for through the longest thing. So it fading away made a ton of sense. But the fact that he was just not a working hero after that, kind of
Mhm.
that's where it stung for me. It was the fact that like it's you know we've seen gadgets, we've seen other things like that work for the common folk and heroes, and Deku couldn't figure out how to do that. Like Deku couldn't be a Batman type fighting along like the Justice League, and
Right. Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
Mhm.
that's where I have the issue. It's not that Deku doesn't have a quirk, it's the fact that like almost that it it's that adulthood thing of like, well, you give up on your childhood dreams, and then you kind of have to tell yourself for the rest of your life like, oh, I'm happy where I am. Yeah, like that's the bitter pill. Like it's like, no, I
Yeah.
don't want to
Mhm.
see Deku like forcing himself to be happy to be a teacher, and like kind of doing these mental gymnastics to like, oh, I'm still in it with everyone. But no, like, no, we wanted you to like be a hero somehow. Deku could have been a
Mhm.
Batman. Like
Mhm.
I don't get that. That's where I have the issue. Evan, what do you think?
I, I think that like at the end of the day, the symbolism of all for one and one for all being two sides of the same coin is just like if one of them's gonna go, then they both have to go. So I
Right.
understand
Right.
that from like a storytelling perspective. And while you were talking, Nick, I actually thought of this, how cool it would be. I mean, you mentioned the idea of like they should have given him something. Like, how cool would it have been if he still had Black Whip at the end? How cool would it have been if he just had like something? But then I thought of a better idea, which is, what if like in his final fight with Shigaraki gives him the power of decay, and he has that, and he has to use that in a way to make that like better. Like that would have been super cool moving forward. I think, like, man,
Also,
I'm going
super
to
traumatizing.
it would be traumatizing for sure, but like the idea of taking that destructive quirk and using it in a way to benefit mankind, that would have been cool. I do think that when it comes to, and I mean, we have, Nick, you mentioned like the Batman stuff. Like that's what like Eraserhead and Shinso.
I mean,
yeah, that's who they became. I mean, effectively, and like Deku could have done that easily. I think that could have been something. But in a way, like I think that him becoming a teacher at UA just kind of really fits his character, like in terms of like he nurtures the good in others. That's always kind of what he did.
It does,
so, like,
but he also could have done that as a hero. So that's why I'm like,
if Aizawa could do both.
Yeah.
Here's what I will say on the topic. The whole thing, I'm split between both of your opinions, because I love the idea that Deku, I mean, like, I have a little like Pochako Deku plushie. He's my favorite thing in the world. Like, he has been with me all day today as I've read this final chapter. The thing that I always have loved about Deku is not his self-sacrificialness, but his willingness that it is inherent to his character that he stands up to help others, whether that is in, a physical interception or interaction, or, emotionally, as we've seen with him helping, not just Bakugo, but Ochako, I mean, Todoroki, countless characters. I mean, I love that. And I love that he is now a mantle of Hero Society where he can teach at UA high school, and he has enjoyed it. I think I would have hated it if it hadn't been, there's the part in this final chapter where Aizawa gives Izuku like an out. Aizawa's like, well, don't you miss being a hero? And Izuku's like, well, yeah, I can't lie and say I don't miss it. But then he references to the fact that though he might be quirkless again, as long as he's able to use the experiences he had while being an active pro hero to encourage others, that he thinks that's really awesome. That kind of optimism that's unwavering is what got Deku through everything that we've seen until this final chapter. So I really love that explanation. It feels very in character for him. And so I feel like Izuku would just be like the coolest, bubbliest teacher. Like, he's definitely won Teacher of the Year award. Like, he is on top of stuff. The one thing I will say in tandem to that is I don't see why it wasn't a and situation instead of a rather situation. Instead of being a hero, he was a teacher. I feel like he could have easily been both, as we talked about with kind of, the amount of training he went through, just physical combat. Like, he could have been a hero, especially given the explanation in this final chapter that the work that heroes are doing in My Hero Academia during this time skip is so different than what they were doing when the series began. It talks about there not being as many villains. It's a lot smaller work. It's a smaller pool of work. And I mean, Hawks was the person to say it. He wanted to create a society where heroes had free time. He had free time to teach and be a hero. So that's the thing that's frustrating to me, is that for like 8 years, he was kind of like waylaid in that a little bit. So that's the problem. That's my only frustration.
No, that's totally it. I totally agree, because like on top of that, like it's the implication that the rest of his class kind of all went off into like these huge hero bright futures, right? Like Bakugo grew like 2 rat tails, like the other heroes are like the other heroes are like in commercials and on billboards and stuff like that. Like members of his class
has a cologne.
Yes, like members of his class, like these are his friends, and it's like, yeah, like you don't always keep the friends you have in high school, right? But
right,
it's a different type of adulthood for them. I would assume that, if you're in a war with somebody and like it's literally life or death situations, like they're you're bonded for life, that kind of thing. And and it definitely, that kind of comes back around in the end where it's like, oh, well, all the heroes, all your friends were actually saving up for 8 years for this. But the way it reads, it's like, oh, well, they kind of abandoned him. Like they all kind of took off and left him at UA. And so Deku, yeah, of course, like shining optimism, all that stuff, like he has it. But to me, in reading that, it looked like the bitter part of that. It looked like the other side of that coin of like, I have to tell myself this because this is my reality. Where it's like, I can't be a hero with my friends. Like I'm watching Kachan like lower himself in the ranks because of the way he talks to people. I'm watching Shoto Todoroki and Mirio rise to the top, and I'm sitting here at the school teaching, and it's like, yeah, what's the old moniker? Those who can't do teach. And it's like, yeah, you feel that. You feel that reading. You read that in the chapter. Like you read that, it reads that way. So like, yeah, Deku, that might be like, yeah, the message might be what Megan's saying of like, yeah, he's just being very positive about what happened to him. But in reading it, it's everyone left him for 8 years. This is the
you know what? You know what? Who didn't leave him? You know who didn't? Aizawa. Aizawa in his friend's Rachel Bob haircut. Guys, that was maybe my biggest takeaway from the chapter is Aizawa cut his hair. I need to know the story behind him cutting his hair. Which brings up the bigger conversation about character designs, essentially. I mean, everything about Aizawa looks the same, except he's rocking a shorter haircut. There he is. If you're watching live right now, you get, that hair, I don't know how I feel about that haircut, to be 100% with you right now.
He's growing up. He's growing up. He doesn't look like a weird homeless guy anymore who's patrolling the streets.
Here's the thing. I argue he looks more homeless than he did before. I don't know how I feel about this haircut. But we obviously get a bunch of new character designs, which I feel like, especially in this kind of post-time skip, the 8-year time skip era, Izuku hasn't aged at all.
No.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page. He does not look like he has aged. Really, it feels like the characters that aged the most are like Shinso. Mina has a really great costume design now. Ochako has a pretty great design. Tenya Ida has like an undercut now, and I'm like, who let you be that cool?
I gotta throw one in. Look at Coda. Look how cool Coda looks.
Like
looks amazing.
It's nuts. It's truly nuts. The character designs slapped. We have to say that. And as we got those character designs, I think the other big surprise we got was kind of the fake out ending for this chapter, because it looked like we were just gonna like get the end of it, and then all of a sudden elderly All Might shows up and like crushes the end signifier.
That's great.
And this is now where we kind of get confirmation that the class 1A students led by Bakugo have been working behind the scenes to give Izuku a chance to stand back on the Pro Hero stage. Essentially, for like the last 8 years, Bakugo has been saving every penny, along with his classmates to a degree, working with All Might, Melissa, all of the people creating, support items like May, to create basically a Mark 2.0 version of All Might's, basically his Iron Man suit, which they give to Deku, which has like repulsor technology in the palms and everything like Tony Stark. So clearly Kohei Horikoshi's Marvel fans coming out in this. But yeah, they basically been saving for 8 years to create this technology. It's pretty nuts. I really enjoyed that fake out ending, because if it ended where it said it was going to end at the first, I would have been furious.
Yeah, that part where he's just like walking into UA again, just this time as an adult. And it's like, yeah, man, cool. Like all that happened to you in your freshman year of high school and you never left. Like that's like on the outside of all this, I can't help but just think of how much of a bummer it kind of is. I'm so sorry. Like I know it does the fake out ending, and I know it's like it's meant to be positive, but the fact that Deku had like lost 8 years of his future, to to kind of being bummed at the fact that like everyone's moving on and like that, like as an adult, as someone who's like super old, that really hits me. I'm like, yo, that's real time that you lost. Like it's not like a yeah, like Evan, yeah, I think you're right. Like it's the story of someone who peaked in high school, but even worse,
13 years old.
Yes, you peaked in your freshman year of high school, which is just the worst. Like I don't even know like in what comparable way of like telling someone's life that way, but it's like, yo, can you imagine you stayed your freshman year self for throughout your high school years, and then 4 years after that, like into your 20s, that you're still your freshman year self. You're still like hanging on to it, and you're still like that. It sucks.
There were Izuku Midoriya failure to launch. I remember that there were fake images going around. I think before like a couple of chapters back, there were fake images of like where Midoriya ends up, and somebody slapped him into like a McDonald's uniform where he was like serving where he was serving like an All Might burger. And I was just like, I could kind of see it, I guess. Like, but the thing is, I will take an opposite spin on Nick's take, which is like, yeah, I mean, in a way, there are I think it's ridiculous that like Ochaku hasn't like kept up. Like, come on, Horikoshi, we want to see who ends up with who. Come on, like,
but also, I don't know if you want that. Evan, I'm 100% serious. I don't think you want that smoke.
No. Like, I thought at the very least, like, Uravity ending up with Deku was something that everybody just thought would be a thing. And apparently that isn't, because
there's a lot of contention about that online.
There's a lot of contention.
And then besides, like their relationship, like Megan is alluding to, I'll just say it straight out. Like, Deku to Chaku's relationship isn't like the forefront of My Hero Academia either. It's Deku and Bakugo.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
like
I didn't.
Yeah, like their friendship was like the whole thing, and this is why like the final panel leading into it is Bakugo reaching out his hand of being like, let's go together. Like that's kind of like a whole thing, and I think we knew the Ochaku thing wasn't going to work out because in the penultimate chapter would have been the perfect time for for them to confess some kind of romantic feelings for each other, but that never happens. Like that's kind of like a, the confession instead is Ochaku being like, man, I'm holding back all these tough feelings about what I went through. And Deku's like, yeah, same. That sucks. And so like getting into this finale, like that's what I mean. Like I know thematically, I'm trying to just wrap my head around it. Thematically, you too can be a hero. Everyone can be a hero. Deku doesn't need the power to be a hero. Thematically, yes, it's a makes sense kind of ending. But reading it, I'm like, why? Deku should have had, like, yes, he gets his happy ending eventually. But I'm like,
it just 8 years.
Yes, as a fan, as a fan who's seen Deku give up everything, just to see him almost kind of like stagnate for 8 years sucks. Like that, I just can't get over that. I'm stuck in that. I really am, and it sucks. I'm stuck like Deku.
I will say this. I mean, all three of us. I mean, we are proper adults. We are through with our schooling years. We've done all that. As adults, I think all three of us can agree it's really hard to keep up with friends, like having a life and doing things and like finding times to intermingle with people. Like my best friend lives like 30 minutes away and it's still like I never get to see her.
Yeah, it might well be another state, right?
Yeah. It really. And if they live in another state, they might as well live in another country. And if they're in another country, I sometimes forget they exist, even though we are great friends. So I understand that part about like class 1A not being together as obvious. I mean, obviously they're not going to be as much together. They don't live together anymore. They're doing their own lives. But it does to me. I don't feel like it's like a total lapse of communication and that bond between everybody, but it definitely reads as the sense that Deku gets left behind in and he drew
Yeah.
the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
I want to kind of talk about the surprises and the highs of this final chapter, and to skip ahead a little bit on our rundown. I mean, Evan, you brought this up perfectly. I do think, as just somebody who has been part of the My Hero Academia fandom for a long time, I think it was a smart choice that we didn't get any relationships confirmed as canon, because that is a wormhole if we learned anything from Naruto. The only relationship that we got confirmed as canon was La Brava and Gentle, which is all I needed, because if you're watching our live stream right now, those two have run a company together and they are wearing matching wedding rings. So I am fine with
Oh
that relationship happening.
Oh, did
I'm
you
fine.
not see that, Nick? I remember Megan told me
no.
that earlier this week, and I was
Yeah,
like, dang, they got together?
they got
Everybody?
them wedding bands on. You think I had to telescope out, not telescope, microscope out, looking at the
I
panels
mean,
of this final chapter.
I don't know how I feel about that one in particular, but
I mean, look,
that's
it
yeah.
was written. It was written on the wall. We also got like the Mount Lady and Kamui Woods. We kind of got a nod to them with like some, pro hero promotional stuff. Um the shipping fandom of any community. I don't care if we're talking The Last of Us or Marvel or anime. I don't care. It's something that is such a tenuous conversation, especially when you're coming into something like a finale. Everyone has had their eyes on, what relationships are going to be made canon. Is it going to be, Ijiro and, Mina? Is it going to be Katsuki and, Izuku? Is it going to be Izuku and Ochako? There's, all of that conversation, which is very much important to the fandom, and the fandom can have that. It just gets so complicated when something is made canon. So I think it was an interesting decision that Kohei Horikoshi just said, no, actually, I'm not going there. So whether or not, you see hints and, suggestions in the chapter, that's up to you in your reading of the chapter. But confirmed, we know La Brava and Gentle are together. So, at least they got their happy ending, I'll say that.
As with my favorite character being Red Riot, I think it's ridiculous that he didn't that they didn't confirm that Red Riot got with Alien Queen. I mean, come on, man. That was, of all of the different ships that were there, that one seemed like the most obvious to me.
Well, look,
Anyway,
they're
I
making
thought,
like TV shows about Red Riot and the time skip, so maybe they will come out with like a Red Riot and Alien Queen movie, because that sounds
mm-hmm,
dope. That slaps.
mm-hmm.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, for a series that really hasn't really focused on any kind of romance, I'm surprised to see any relationships confirmed in general.
Mhm.
So that the fact that there's one feels good. It feels big enough, but
Mhm.
it then it also, once again, that's something if Deku was dating, maybe it wouldn't feel so bad if he were
Maybe he
just like
wouldn't be so rough. Aw. Man, now I'm just sad.
that's I'm sorry. This is just another nail in that. Deku was alone for 8 years.
Oh my
Listen,
God.
it's just
Deku is molding the next generation, and he's
He
putting
is,
all
and
of
I mean,
his
looking at who's
heroic
in school.
efforts.
Yeah, I mean, look at who's in school with him. One, the villain that we met in the epilogue, in the last
Yeah.
chapter, the epilogue before the finale, the boy that everyone, was kept basically in his family's basement. He's now a student at Class 1A. He's one of Deku's students that he teaches, and he's also in that same class as Kota. So our little man who kicked Izuku where the sun don't shine as a child is now being taught by Deku at UA High School, which is super cute. We also got like a little peek that, Aries in high school, and she's got friends and she's playing guitar. Like, there's a lot of good stuff that Izuku has been doing, molding this next generation at UA, and we're seeing some familiar faces, which feels really kind of gratifying as a fan. But it just seems like it's a good fit for Deku to be that kind of teacher, like moving people forward, I feel. Again, I do agree with Nick. There is the reading that Izuku was really lonely, which I
yeah,
hate, because dude had it so rough. And
yes,
he had he had such a good time for like the first half of his freshman year of high school. And then it got
yeah,
really dark. And then he finished his years in high school with just like the looming threat that, well, like not the threat, but like the inevitable knowledge that his quirk was going to go away. And then it went away. And then he was, I guess, did he go to college? How did he get his teacher's license? Like, I'm so confused. There's a lot of questions I have about that transition of Izuku being like, okay, well, I don't have a quirk now. I can't be a hero, which all three of us agree you can still be a hero without a quirk in this universe, especially in the post All for One Shigaraki universe. That's the whole point, is that your everyday person can be a hero. So why wasn't Izuku included with that? Maybe I'm just a little salty. Again, me and my little Izuku plushie right here, we have questions that I would like answered.
No, I think that's exactly where I'm at, Megan. It's like, for Deku to go through so much throughout the series, only to become like the Al Bundy 4 touchdowns in one game type at the end. It's like, you know, it feels like such a bummer. Like, it's like, wow, like, you know, and the only way he gets out of that is more help from his friends, which is like, it's part of the theme, right? But at the same time, it's like, it does feel weird for Deku himself to kind of give up, right? Like, I can't get past the fact that his being a teacher, yes, it's a noble effort. You know, you're doing the right thing. Teaching is a hard job.
I'm not saying we love teachers on this podcast. We're not saying that being a teacher is like a low point. We love
1,000%.
It's a hard life.
Yeah, it is a heroic profession. It really is.
Truly,
but in this case, where it's like you can be an actual like superhero, and we have some on the level who, like, in My Hero Academia, like we've mentioned, there's like a washing machine hero. There's a hero who just controls little things of water. Like, Deku could have been any one of those. He could have been like the traffic hero. Here, let me help guide you through traffic. I am like, and you know, and then there are other professions. There are, as we've seen in My Hero Academia, there are rescue professions. There are police. There are firefighters. There are all sorts of things. Heroic professions. It's just like, this is where I'm sorry. I'm like, you just never left the building where you were happiest. This is why I'm just like, I can't help but read it that way. I'm so sorry, everyone.
Problem. I feel like maybe if Izuku had taught somewhere else that wasn't UA, I might be a little less upset about it. Because then at least, like, he was like, I grew. I'm bringing perspective elsewhere. Like, let him teach in, like, if not in a different school, you know, in Japan, a hero school, take him elsewhere. Go to Otheon, go to America where All Might went. Like, do something that broadens that perspective and gives you character growth rather than staying kind of at that same place. I feel like for me, that would have probably have helped a lot in seeing Izuku get that transition. So, I mean, we've already talked about some of our frustrations, and we've talked about, you know, our appreciations as well. This is a well-rounded podcast episode. We're sharing everybody. But there are some lows that, you know, of course we have to admit. I mean, the clear one is Horikoshi lied to everybody years ago at San Diego Comic-Con when he said he had a plan for Izuku's father, because, man, he never entered the building. He exited stage left. He never showed up. You know what my favorite theory is? My favorite theory is that he has been in this picture the whole time, but he's always at work. Like, he's been living at the apartment with Nico this whole time, but he's always at work. He's there.
Just watching all of these fights happen.
His shoes are there. We've just never seen him.
I gotta get these TPS reports in. I hope Deku's okay.
Well, I hope my son's okay. That's my favorite theory, to be frankly honest with you. But yeah, we've still never seen him. So
yeah, it is hilarious. The final time we see like Deku's mom, it could have easily been a point where Horikoshi also could have just drawn Deku's dad in, just for, you know,
his face. It could have just been the back of his head, and we were gonna be like, "Oh, he exists," but nothing. Nothing. However, people did note in that panel there are 3 umbrellas in the living room and like by the entryway, and there's also an extra pair of shoes. So people are thinking that maybe that Zuko's dad is there.
Well, you see what you want to see, right?
I know. Maybe that's the hill that Horikoshi was like, I'm gonna die on this hill. I don't want to bring his dad into the picture.
I
But say what you want.
I think like his dad isn't necessarily something that like I needed to, like we still don't know
Yeah,
who Ash
it's
Ketchum's
totally
dad
fine.
is, and like
Yeah.
that's something that we never really knew at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I
but here's
think
the
that
thing, at least we knew that Ash's dad went to go become a trainer and he left. Like, at
yeah, he
least we
went to go
knew
get
that.
cigarettes and he never came back. We all know the story. we all
He
know
went to
what
go, he
happened
went
to
to go get
Ash's
some
dad.
milk from the milk tank and he never,
he was
I don't know.
doing something like that.
True.
I think that for me, like one of the big unanswered questions for me that I thought was like kind of crazy. Number one, like if we look at the end of the series, I thought that like how this all wrapped, it wrapped too fast for me. I thought that like when we were talking about it initially and we were writing up reports about how the epilogue was going to be really long, at least like that's kind of Kohei was hinting at that fact. I thought we were initially going to get a chapter for every single class 1A character. Like that would go, okay, here's what they are going to do into the future. And then we would end with Deku at the end. And another thing, a huge story point that I am shocked that they didn't address in this because like it's still kind of lingering. And I know that it was kind of addressed in the final fight, but like the Quirk Singularity theory is still out there. The idea that all of these quirks are still intermingling, like it was called the Quirk Doomsday theory for a reason. Because, like, regardless of the idea of whether or not you were able to, which they did, they took down All for One, they took down Shigaraki, they took down Toga. But the idea that all of these quirks are still becoming this, they're all becoming like this big uniform thing where it doesn't even matter if you're a hero or a villain. You become so powerful that you inadvertently blow up the world by sneezing. I thought that that was something that like that was an interesting concept that I thought wasn't necessarily like, given as much breathing room as I thought that it should have. Like, yes, and I mentioned this to Megan, the idea of I loved like that villain, that final villain who was meant to be like a mirror to Shigaraki, who was taken off the brink by having his grandmother take his hand. I thought that should have been just the end of the series in general. That worked so well in terms of the essence of My Hero Academia. But again, those are just kind of my general like issues that I had with how this ended versus like the final chapter itself. I thought that there were some things that could have been explored that weren't necessarily.
Yeah, that's the problem with a final chapter in general, right? Like it's the problem with, like we've said before, we're lucky to have gotten the epilogue, because if this were any other Shonen Jump series, Deku would have landed that final hit on All for One. Next chapter would have been the ending. So we're lucky to have gotten like these 5-6 additional chapters anyway. And that's the issue with the series in general, is that there's so much. Like I think looking back on it, yes, like that meant like it was easier to kill off characters, it was easier to like sideline others, but we've gotten so many over the years that like when it came to ending it, there just wasn't enough space for everyone. Like I think like along the lines of Evan was saying, this final chapter, like we have one mention of the League of Villains in that book that Spinner wrote, which is kind of like, yeah, cool, but also it's like, yeah, like this is, and we get the hints of the future in that, there are less villain activities, to the point where one of the hero kids, the students, mentions that they only really take like the people with like the hypest of powers, basically like the highest echelon of abilities to become heroes. So like those are good like indicators that the future is peaceful. It's just like, yeah, we needed, you need something other than like context clues. Like for a Shonen Jump series, we needed that one last thing to see. Like we needed that, unfortunately, I know like man, I guess I don't know if I want to spoil it here, but so Bleach's ending kind of has that, Like Bleach's ending, it does the time skip, and it quite literally is like, oh, is there big villain going to show up? Nope. And it cuts it off right then and there by saying, no, like our future is bright, our new, the future of this particular character is bright because, next generation type thing. And we needed something like that for My Hero Academia. We just needed that one like concrete thing. And like, yes, it's cool to have Deku's narration, all that stuff, really thematic, very heroic, very superhero like story. But we just needed that one last concrete nail in the coffin of like villains. Like, like you're like
that's
yeah,
that's a great stuff. Oh yeah, you guys go ahead.
I'll say this because we do have to take a break for a quick second, but when we come back, what Nick just said feeds in really great to kind of our overarching conversation. Was this concrete answer not given because My Hero Academia isn't actually over? What is the actual future of this franchise going to look like? Is there a future? Those are the questions that everybody has right now. So we are going to be doing more of a deep dive conversation on that topic based on the context clues that were left in the final chapter. So if you want to listen to that conversation, stay tuned. We got to take a quick break, but we will be back. Oh, welcome back to Anime Initiative, the show at Comic Book where we talk all things anime, manga, webtoons, and more. We are back with our conversation to talk about My Hero Academia. The manga has ended. We just had like a 40-minute discussion about it. And guess what? We have even more to discuss because this chapter was thick and it was packed. What we kind of want to move to now is more of a broad discussion of the franchise as a whole to move past kind of the singularity of the epilogue and the final chapter itself. If you have listened to this wonderful episode, and if you are just tuning in now, please go back and listen to the whole thing. Nick brought up a really great point where he was talking about how he felt that there wasn't kind of a concrete, firm, solidified ending, talking about, especially how villains are working in the universe of My Hero Academia in a post-time skip fashion. We have all talked about our, questions, if not frustrations, about kind of where Izuku ends, kind of his journey in the series. So the question that I want to pose is, was all of this kind of left up in the air? Was it made intentionally vague, given open ends, because the future of My Hero Academia is not over? To clarify this point before we get into discussion, creator Kohei Horikoshi, has done recent interviews with Viz Media and other outlets saying that he did have more content planned to explore with the My Hero Academia universe, things like, the backstories for the different, one for all users, stuff like that. Ultimately was not put into the manga. And when asked if he was interested in exploring any of those stories himself, most recently Horikoshi said he was not. So with all that in context, that is what we know publicly speaking. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? We have zero idea and context for. But based on what we've read, in the final chapter in the epilogue and what we kind of saw as the lead up in terms of pacing for the final arc of My Hero Academia, man, with this ending in particular, I just feel like it's begging for a continuation. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm being too hopeful. What do you guys think?
I think that we are, at the very least, we are 100% getting a My Hero Academia 5th movie that is them as adults. I'll put that. I think that that's
I was gonna go the
100%
Naruto
going to
route.
happen.
I was gonna do with
Yeah,
Naruto.
yeah. At
It
least,
came
at
out
least,
with
at least,
Boruto Naruto the movie.
yeah, yeah. At least to start, they want the money machine to go burr, and like turns out like everybody would go see that movie, like if it were to come out. And I think that again, one of the things that we've talked about here at Anime Initiative is that we want our manga artists to live. So
And be
having
healthy.
Kohei like having him like he's earned his retirement, having him do a My Hero Academia Shippuden is like, I don't know if he would survive it. But the idea of him like continuing to have like the seedlings of a story that's like, just consult me, I will give you ideas for stories in the future that other people can run with. Megan had shared her past interview with the creator where he talks about how much he loves like Marvel comics, where he talks about like, you know, North American comics in general. And that idea is like those characters, they never truly end. They keep going. Other people kind of take the ball and they run with it. And like I could see that for My Hero Academia. I could see, we saw it with other spin-offs. We saw like apparently the series is hinting at some big announcement. I think this week is gonna like be dropped. So who knows? That's kind of how I see it moving forward.
Mm. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I'm in that same boat, but then also this is just the way it ended. Like this is just
Yeah.
like yeah, it's intentionally open, but that's a Shonen Jump ending. The Shonen
Yeah.
Jump endings are like and their lives go on. This is pretty much like every ending. Like I don't think, unless it's like a total doom, like they all kind of die kind of ending. This is literally just how they all end. They go, okay, time skip, lives are over, lives are continuing in the future, you can imagine what happens next, that kind of stuff. Like it's I don't think it was intentional to like set up a sequel, but like like Evan mentioned, there are the anime can pick things up from then, because the anime will likely end with season 8. Like looking at what season 7 has adapted, looking at how much is left, and looking at where the series ended, an 8th and final season will probably be it. Then after that, a movie with them as adults would be dope, you know, because if not, then they have to adjust the 8-year period where Deku's not involved, and you can't really do that in a new movie, can you? Like you can't have Deku being like, "Fight hard, everybody, or go fight that villain," and you know, I'm gonna sit here and teach. You can't do that for a movie. So like, we will eventually get to see that. That's going to be cool, but I do hope that there is room though for those spin-offs, because we've seen characters lent out for the likes of team up missions, we've seen vigilantes, we've seen all that stuff that may or may not be canon, and I do kind of hope that that's the case. Like if another creator wants to take a whack at My Hero Academia at whatever, then that would be cool too. But also I don't know, this is kind of the thing, is like with it being over, it's kind of like it's over, you know what I mean? Like it's different from like a fairy tale, where fairy tale continued and it's literally just another project the creator's doing. That's just what on top of whatever. It doesn't feel the same. I think like, because the way, you know, just to spoil fairy tale, the way that ended, it literally didn't have a time skip or anything. It was literally and their lives go on, and then the sequel was like their lives go on and we're picking up right from where that ended. Like it's like we're gonna see right from then on. It wasn't like their lives go on, all kinds of adventures. No, it was literally like, let's see that adventure we were teasing. So it's just, it's such an ending, and it ended in such a way that like, this is it. To me, it just kind of feels like closing the book of My Hero Academia. Whatever projects there might be, you know, it might be celebrating the 10th anniversary, that kind of stuff. Might just be like new manga releases in Japan. I don't know. I'm not getting my hopes up too high, but you know, we'll see. who knows? Maybe I sail this, and then later Horikoshi's like, "Hey, I got a sequel." Then who cares what I'm saying? But
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, in my heart of hearts, as just like a really massive fan of My Hero Academia, I mean, there's the sting of the ending and knowing that this series that has been, such a constant companion with me for the last decade is over. I mean, it's that kind of hollowing kind of feeling. Like you're like, man, there's a big Deku shaped hole in
yeah,
my heart now, and I have nothing to fill it with. Um, what I keep coming back to when I think about the future of My Hero Academia, one, its legacy is solid. It is going to go down with, the likes of Demon Slayer for helping, really bring and popularize this latest kind of, generation and push of manga forward into, not just, into the West, but globally. I mean, we talk about the massive push that anime and manga has had since the post COVID 2020 years, which has been exponential. But My Hero Academia, even before then, was helping push that and set that that landscape up. Because one of the shows that popped off really hard during the pandemic was My Hero Academia. It was One Piece.
Mhm.
It was these titles that, were banging before 2020, and then once an audience was able to kind of invest their time into the medium and those franchises, it popped off. So its legacy is secured. I'm in so many ways not worried about that. And when it comes to seeing a sequel of My Hero Academia, again, as Nick iterated, this is a very prototypical finale for a series. The thing that we've seen with Shonen Jump though is for big name series, it really likes sequels, and Shonen Jump really
Mhm.
doesn't let those go. It doesn't want to let those money makers go if it can help it. Capitalism speaks, money speaks. That's unfortunate. I don't want My Hero Academia to continue for the sake of it being a cash cow because that is the worst possible fate for a franchise. I think bringing in creators similar to how Vigilantes worked. I mean, to this
Mhm.
day, I love Vigilantes. That
Mhm.
prequel, how it tied into the main series, it teed up so much of the stuff with Aizawa as a high schooler, with Mirko and how they kind of came into the hero scene, as well as then having original characters. I feel like having that, you know, work as having, new creators come in with Horikoshi supervising and consulting to do projects works great. I want that man to take a vacation. I want that
Yeah.
man to do what he wants to do and relax, because the amount of work he's
Please
been putting
live.
on My Hero Academia for the last decade is insane. If he wants to come back one day and do a sequel, then I will support him with my whole heart.
there we
Um,
go. Yeah,
but
Mhm.
I would love to see something like My Hero Agency where it's going through, well, what is Izuku going through now that he's able to have this suit? I want to see that suit in action. Like just from a pure action standpoint, seeing All Might's fight with All For One in that mecha suit was sick in the manga. I want to see
Mhm.
that. And I
Mhm.
want to see more of that. I think there's a lot that could be done there. So I feel like there's absolutely that opportunity that has been left purposefully as kind of an open end if we want to continue the story of My Hero Academia. There's no doubt the fandom's going to take it and run with it. The number of fan art, fan comics, fan fiction, it's going to be everywhere if you want to continue the story in other ways. But in an official capacity, I feel like My Hero Academia as an ending overall encapsulates kind of the best parts of the series, looking at it from a macroscopic view. Again, as we talked about in this podcast, when we start getting into the nitty gritty parts, it kind of falls apart, but you can say that for like any Shonen Jump finale. And I stick by that. um, but yeah, I will say this, I would be surprised if we don't get some kind of My Hero Academia continuation. In the same way we had like Naruto the last movie, where Naruto and
Mhm.
Hinata got their stuff together, when we had Boruto Naruto the movie where we were kind of introduced to this next generation. Those things, I mean, oh man, they made so much money. I mean, they made so much money. It kickstarted the Boruto sequel. Am I saying
Mhm.
I want a next generation sequel to My Hero Academia? Honestly, not really. I so don't care about a next generation at this point. I'd rather continue focusing on the current generation. but that provides a problem because they're all, in their mid-20s, and this is a shonen series, so we got to kind of play it fast and loose. But I feel like it is set up so well for either a 5th movie or some sort of OVA series that kind of focuses on the time skip area beyond what the manga gave us. So cross my fingers. I'm crossing them now that we'll get more content in a bit. I don't need it anytime soon. Give Horikoshi a break. That is my that's my perspective.
Yeah, because you gotta let the ending sink in, right? And that's
Yeah.
the thing is like I might have my issues with it now. I might be like having tons of fun making fun of what happened to Deku, but like at the same time, like eventually I'm gonna be like, yeah, well, it ended well, like it ended. Like that's the thing,
Yeah.
and I think I'm just wrapping my end up of all these things. Like I think I'm just appreciative of the fact that it got to end. Like
Yeah.
it's a 10-year series in Shonen Jump, and this is incredibly rare these days. While for every My Hero Academia, there are series like Mama Yu Yu that like never got to like really flesh out where it was going, to the point where after it ended, the creator had to draw an additional like 40 pages to like an epilogue that he never got to introduce into the series.
Yeah.
It's for every series like that, like you don't get a lot of that with My Hero Academia. You don't get this type of ending, and it's funny that it got the cover of Shonen Jump with the penultimate chapter, and like the final chapter kind of like you see the cover of the Shonen Jump page, and it literally looks like Luffy's pushing Deku out of the way.
It does. It looks like Luffy is shoving Izuku's face backwards.
I'll never die.
Yeah, which is hilarious. And that's the other thing. Like, I think, in the grand scheme of things, I think that's when that ending, whenever that happens, that'll hit me. But right now, I think I just got to let this one sink in, and eventually it's going to hit the fact that like you know what it is? Next week, when there's no new chapter or there's no new episode because there's like a break for the anime, I think that's when it's really going to sink in for me and for everyone that, there really is no My Hero Academia.
We graduated from the academia.
we were when we as a team were talking earlier this week about like the endings that we experienced as a trio while working for the site and everything. The other one that we mentioned was Attack on Titan, which is obviously that is a extremely controversial ending. And like if you compare the ending of My Hero Academia to that, and yeah, we're nitpicking, of course. That's we're critics, we're reviewers, we'll nitpick and stuff like that. But I think like at the end of the day, like the lasting legacy of My Hero Academia for me, I feel will kind of be stronger than like Eren Yeager's and Attack on Titan in general, because I think that there were way more, I started off by yelling United States of Smash, but like that's one of many other. And yes, the series, it did stumble from time to time. I thought that you probably could have cut it back like one. I thought that you could have probably ended it with the season 6's big fight versus it kind of felt like they were retreading some ground with the end of that. But like at the end of the day, like My Hero Academia meant so much to us, and it meant so much to anime fans in general that I think like that can never be denied. We'll see if it has a sequel, in general. I think it would be cool if it did, but like at the end of the day, I'd also be very cool with this being like the final goodbye to Deku in Class 1A. Much like Kohei Horikoshi, they've kind of earned their retirement. And we can all kind of talk about.
Excuse you, Izuku hasn't. He's been on a break for like 8 years.
Yeah.
Hey, it's hard to be a teacher.
Look,
you got to look
hard.
at all your
tell me
doing. You got to look at all your friends doing great, and you got to be sitting there and grading papers. That's rough, man. But no, like in all seriousness, I think that like it was a worthy ending. I think to the characters and to this story as a whole. And I think that like whether or not there's a sequel, we'll see. But like this, as kind of Nick said as well, this was a good. I think that like this really would have lost something had it gone further than had it kept going. Had there never been an ending, in general. So it's a nice wrap. I feel.
I feel like looking at this podcast, and we've joked about this before. There's the hierarchy of how we receive shows like Demon Slayer or My Hero Academia, and Nick loves it, but he's willing to be very critical about it. Evan, lovely old little uncle energy vibes. He's just happy to be here to talk about the show. I am like number one My Hero Academia stan. I have, tattoos that reference it. It is an incredibly important show to me, and I know I'm not alone in that. There are literally millions of fans for this series that, whether they read the manga or they only watch the anime or they do both. The story of what Kohei Horikoshi has created, the legacy of it, it is impressive. It is long spanning. It will be here for a while. People will talk about My Hero Academia in 20 years the way we talk about Bleach now. And, looking even further into the future, how people talk about One Piece, how people talk about Dragon Ball. Am I saying that they are equivalent at this point in time? No. But, it is a series that is going to live for a long time in the hearts of fans, for superhero fans, manga fans, anime fans, just people who like good storytelling. It's going to be around for a long time. I, in my heart of hearts, would love to see a sequel. I'm like 60% wanting a sequel, 40% okay if we end it where it is right now. That's kind of where my trajectory is. But when it comes to this ending, and now that we can look at My Hero Academia from this final point, from beginning to the very end, there is still a lot of processing that still needs to be done on everyone's ends about this finale. But I feel like ultimately this last chapter was a really good love letter to the series. It didn't do everything we wanted, but the manga didn't do that either. It hit the high points that we needed. It really focused on Izuku, which is kind of what I wanted to see from, a manga that kind of began talking about how Izuku would become the world's greatest hero. I wanted to see that focus. And, I would love to see more of it. But if that doesn't happen, I feel like what we got with Izuku was great. The overall balance, I feel, of Shonen Jump is changing. This is kind of one of those big hallmark endings that we've been given. With other series like Jujutsu Kaisen heading towards its finale, Black Clover, which I know has moved magazines, but it's still in the Jump family. There's a lot of changing and shifting going on with Shueisha and the Shonen Jump family. There's the jokes that, My Hero Academia is dying now, so Kagurabachi can live. However you want to do that. I feel like the thing, though, is that series like Kagurabachi get to live because of My Hero Academia. And even today, in the author's notes, Gege Akutami, the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen, said that his series would not exist if My Hero Academia hadn't existed. We're getting that kind of generational influence, which is already a signifier of an excellent series. So as much as I don't want to let it go, I feel like My Hero Academia, it really hit a home run. It really did kind of go beyond in giving us the epilogue and giving us some closure that we don't normally see from Shonen Jump. And I think I speak for all fans, but especially the three of us here when we, congratulate Kohei Horikoshi on a job well done. Not just for, his excellent artistry and storytelling. He really challenged a lot of tropes and narratives that you see in the superhero franchise, and superheroes have blown up incredibly, since 2008, 2010. He did a lot of fun challenging to that trope, which I think has almost become a standard in some ways for the superhero universe. So I am happy with what we got. Definitely sad to see it go. It's going to hit me real hard next when we don't get a new chapter anytime soon. But ultimately, I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's like I'm excited to see what he does next. More so,
Yeah.
I think that's another reason.
Something like horror related.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, more than like a sequel or anything. Like I want something new from him. Like let him take a year off. Let him come out with a bunch of one shots. Yeah, like let him experiment to figure out what the next big thing is. And I can't wait to see what that is. I really can't.
Yeah, let that man cook. He said he wants to do something horror. I would love to see it. And to everyone who's listening to this episode, support that man when he comes out with his new series.
Yeah, don't let it.
Support. Read
don't
his
let it be a
words.
don't let the Naruto
you're
thing happen, right? Yeah. So Samurai 8, Masashi Kishimoto was like, yo, I'm here with the brand new series. You're all gonna love it. One volume in, canceled. RIP. And then he had to come back to Boruto. I mean, yeah, let's make Boruto better than it ever has been, but what could have been, right? So
What could have been?
What could have been?
When he comes back, but for now, let's wish him the best as he gets a well-due break. So that is our bonus conversation and our bonus episode to talk about the end chapter of My Hero Academia. I'm sure we will have more content about this finale, reactions, the new surprise announcement that the team is teasing, in the coming days. So this is not the last time we will talk about My Hero Academia on this podcast. Don't you worry. But that is the final chapter. So thank you for joining us in our conversation today. We had a lot to unpack, and there's still even more to go through because, I went through that chapter with a microscope. So if you want to go through our coverage on the finale, you can check it out at Comicbook.com. On our anime homepage, we have tons of goodies to read through. If you want to listen to other podcasts just like this one, Comic Book has plenty. We have Comic Book Nation, we have Pull List, we have Quick Save, we have A Wild Podcast has appeared. We have it all, really, if you want to listen to, fun people talking about geeky news. Beyond that, if you want to talk My Hero Academia with any of us here, you can find me on social media at Megan Peters CB. Evan, where can they find you?
You can find me at EV Comedy on all the
And
socials.
Nick?
And you can find me at Valdisology on all the socials, as well as Pop Culture's Social Call with Anna Rumor.
Awesome. Well, this was our bonus episode. We will be back on our normal schedule with Anime Initiative. We will have our episode on Tuesday, so please look forward to that. We will have plenty of anime news to talk about that because, believe it or not, My Hero Academia isn't the only thing we talk about on this show. A lot of anime stuff has happened in the past few days, and we will go over it there. So, in the meantime, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining the Anime Initiative. We will see you soon.